The twin suns of Gilor 9 were setting, painting the desert wasteland in shades of copper and crimson. Kai wiped the sweat from his brow with a grease-stained cloth, squinting through the electromagnetic storm brewing on the horizon. Lightning crackled across the sky in unnatural patterns, green and violet tendrils that could fry any unshielded electronics within seconds. He'd chosen this hellhole precisely because nobody else wanted it. The mining outpost sat like a metal scab on the planet's scarred surface, its prefab structures huddled against the endless sandstorms and radiation bursts. Most prospectors lasted 6 months before the isolation drove them back to civilized space. Kai had been here for 3 years. His workshop occupied the easternmost hangar, a cavernous space filled with salvaged parts, jury-rigged equipment, and the skeletal remains of machines he'd been cannibalizing for spare components. The place smelled of ozone, hydraulic fluid, and the metallic tang that came with working on century-old mining equipment. Kai was elbowed deep in the guts of a malfunctioning ore processor when the proximity alarm started screaming. He froze, listening. The alarm pattern wasn't one he recognized, not the steady pulse that meant an approaching sandstorm, nor the staccato burst warning of hostile fauna. This was something new, something big. Through the hangar's reinforced viewport, he saw it. A streak of fire tearing across the darkening sky. Too controlled to be a meteorite, too damaged to be a normal landing approach. The ship, because it had to be a ship, was coming in trailing debris and plasma discharge. Shit, Kai muttered, grabbing his emergency kit. Crashes meant salvage rights, but they also meant complications. The last thing he needed was corporate security or bounty hunters sniffing around his operation. The impact came 30 seconds later. A thunderous boom that shook dust from the rafters and set every tool on his workbench dancing. Through the viewport, he saw the mushroom cloud of sand and debris rising maybe 2 clicks to the north. Close. Too close. Kai threw on his environment suit, checking the seals twice out of habit. The suit was patched in a dozen places, held together by industrial tape and prayer, but it would keep the radiation at bay for a few hours. He grabbed his toolkit, a plasma cutter, and after a moment's hesitation, the ancient projectile weapon he kept hidden behind the ventilation unit. The crash site was still smoldering when he arrived, his sand-scarred rover grinding to a halt at the crater's edge. What he saw made him whistle low. This wasn't any ship design he recognized. The hull was a flowing organic shape that seemed to shift subtly in the dying light, some kind of adaptive camouflage that was failing now, revealing patches of iridescent metal beneath. The ship was small, built for speed rather than cargo, with swept-back wings that looked more grown than manufactured. Expensive. Definitely expensive. Kai approached carefully, scanner in one hand, weapon in the other. The ship's main hatch had been blown open. Whether by the crash or by whoever was piloting, he couldn't tell. Dark smoke leaked from the interior, carrying the acrid smell of fried circuits and something else. Something floral and utterly alien. He was about to call out when he saw her. She lay half in, half out of the hatch. Her body twisted at an angle that made his gut clench. Human in shape, but wrong in all the details that mattered. Her skin had an opalescent quality, shifting between pale silver and soft gold as the light hit it. What he'd first taken for clothing was actually some kind of biometallic weave that clung to her form like a second skin, torn in places to reveal wounds that bled a faint luminescent blue. But it was the tech integrated into her body that made him pause. Delicate filigree of metal traced along her exposed arms, disappearing beneath the bow weave. Neural interfaces dotted her temples like decorative jewels. This wasn't crude cybernetics. This was something else entirely. Something that made the best human augmentation look like stone tools. She wasn't breathing. Kai cursed, holstering his weapon and dropping to his knees beside her. His scanner confirmed what his eyes already knew. She was alive, but barely. multiple internal injuries, system shock from whatever integrated tech she was running, and what looked like blast damage along her left side. He should walk away. Every instinct screamed at him to strip the ship for parts and leave her for the desert to claim. Getting involved with whoever, whatever she was, could only bring trouble. Instead, he found himself carefully lifting her into his arms. She weighed less than he expected, her body almost unnaturally light. Up close, he could see the fine scales that covered her skin, each one catching the light like a tiny prism. "This is stupid," he told himself as he carried her to the rover. "Momentally stupid." Back at the workshop, Kai cleared his primary work with a sweep of his arm, sending tools clattering to the floor. He laid her down as gently as he could, then began the delicate process of assessing her injuries. The bow weave was the first problem. It seemed to be part medical system, part armor, but it was damaged and interfering with his scans. He'd have to cut it away, but he had no idea if it was keeping her alive or killing her. Working by instinct and decades of experience with alien tech, Kai began carefully separating the weave from her skin. It came away in sections, each piece maintaining its shape even when removed. Definitely programmable matter of some kind. Beneath her injuries were worse than he'd thought. Whatever had hit her ship had sent shrapnel through the hull, and several pieces were still embedded in her side. But as he watched, the wounds were already beginning to close. Not healing exactly, but sealing themselves with a thin film of that same biometallic material. "Adaptive recovery system," he murmured, impressed despite himself. "Nice." He worked through the night, using every trick he'd learned in 30 years of fixing things that shouldn't be fixable. Her alien physiology complicated everything. Her blood pressure was wrong. Her neural activity spiked in patterns that made no sense, and something in her chest cavity was definitely not a human heart. But broken was broken, no matter the species. He sutured what needed suturing, removed what needed removing, and jury-rigged connections between his equipment and her bio-integrated systems until his monitors finally showed something approaching stable vitals. It was dawn when she finally stirred, the first sun casting long shadows across the workshop floor. Kai had dozed off in his chair, but the change in her breathing pattern woke him instantly. Her eyes opened slowly, twin orbs of shifting color that seemed to hold depths of starlight. For a moment, she stared at him without recognition, without comprehension. Then something like awareness flickered across her features. She tried to speak, but only managed a wet cough that brought up more of that luminescent blood. Kai was beside her in an instant, supporting her head and offering water from his canteen. "Easy," he said, not knowing if she could understand him. "You crashed. You're hurt. Just take it easy." She drank slowly, her eyes never leaving his face. When she finally spoke, her voice was like silk over steel, carrying harmonics that made his teeth ache. "Where?" The word came out, and accented but clear standard, which surprised him. "Gaylord 9 mining outpost, middle of nowhere." He helped her lie back down. "Your ship came down hard about 2 clicks north of here. What's left of it anyway?" Something flickered across her features. Alarm? Fear? It was gone before he could identify it. "I don't." She touched her temple, wincing. "I don't remember." Kai studied her, noting the way her fingers trembled. The careful neutrality of her expression. In 30 years of dealing with smugglers, fugitives, and people running from things better left unmentioned, he'd gotten good at recognizing lies. She was lying. But then again, everyone who ended up on Gaylord 9 was running from something. That was practically the planet's motto. "Memory loss is common with head trauma," he said, playing along. "Might come back, might not. What should I call you?" She hesitated then. "Lyra. My name is Lyra." Another lie, probably, but he told his share of those, too. "Kai," he offered. I run this salvage operation, such as it is. He gestured at the cluttered workshop. You're lucky I found you when I did. Desert gets cold at night, and the local wildlife isn't friendly. Thank you, she said. And that at least sounded genuine. Her eyes traveled over the workshop, taking in details with an intensity that seemed too sharp for someone claiming memory loss. They lingered on his modified equipment, the alien tech he'd integrated into his systems, the weapons rack barely concealed behind a hanging tarp. My ship, she said suddenly. Is it? Haven't had a chance to look at it properly, Kai admitted. But from what I saw, you're going to need more than a patch job. Main drive is slag. Half your hull is scattered across the desert, and whatever hit you did a number on your control systems. Yukum. She absorbed this with remarkable calm for someone who just lost their only means of escape from a backwater planet. Can you fix it? Kai snorted. Lady, I can fix anything. Question is whether it's worth fixing. That kind of damage. You'd be better off buying a new ship. I need that ship. The intensity in her voice made him look at her more closely. Please, I'll pay whatever you ask. Credits won't do me much good out here, but he scratched his beard. Considering I could use an extra pair of hands around the shop, you help me with my work. I'll see what I can do about yours. Deal? She nodded without hesitation, which told him she was either desperate or confident in her ability to handle whatever he might ask. Given the tech integrated into her body, he was betting on the latter. Rest for now, he said, standing. I'll go take a proper look at your ship. See what we're dealing with. Try not to die while I'm gone. I just cleaned that table. The ghost of a smile touched her lips. I'll do my best. Kai suited up again, loaded his rover with cutting tools and diagnostic equipment, and headed back to the crash site. The morning light revealed details he'd missed in the darkness. The precise angle of impact, the way the sand had been fused to glass in places, the scatter pattern of debris, and the blood trail leading away from the ship. He followed it for about 50 meters before it disappeared, ending at a patch of disturbed sand. Kneeling, he found what he was looking for. A partial boot print, too small to be from mining boots, too precise to be from the local fauna. She'd had a passenger, someone who'd survived the crash and walked away, or been dragged away. Kai stood slowly, hand moving to his weapon as he scanned the horizon. Nothing moved in the morning heat, except the eternal dance of dust devils. But Galore 9 had taught him that the real dangers were usually the ones you couldn't see coming. He spent the rest of the day cataloging the damage to Lyra's ship, downloading what data he could from the partially fried computer core, and salvaging the most valuable components. The ship was even more advanced than he'd initially thought. The hull incorporated self-repair systems that were still trying to function. The engine used a form of antimatter containment he'd only read about in theoretical papers, and the navigation system had been deliberately destroyed, not damaged in the crash. Destroyed. Someone had taken a plasma torch to it with surgical precision, ensuring no one could trace where this ship had been. By the time he returned to the workshop, the second sun was setting, and his mind was churning with questions. He found Lyra sitting up on the table, examining one of his repair drones with intense curiosity. You should be resting, he said, setting down his salvage. I've rested enough. She set the drone aside carefully. How bad is it? Bad. He pulled off his environment suit, hanging it on its rack. But not impossible. Going to take time, though. Weeks, maybe months. She nodded as if she'd expected this. I can work. I'm good with tech, I figured. He gestured at her bio-integrated systems. That's not exactly standard issue augmentation. She touched one of the neural interfaces self-consciously. I don't remember how I got them. Another lie, but he let it pass. Fair enough. You hungry? Food here isn't much, but it'll keep you alive. They ate in companionable silence. Processed protein and recycled water, the staples of frontier life. Lyra picked at her food initially. then seemed to realize how hungry she was and ate with surprising enthusiasm. So Kai said eventually, "What were you running from?" She looked up sharply. "What makes you think I was running?" Nobody ends up on Geor 9 by choice. And nobody flies that fast, unless they've got something worth running from chasing them. For a long moment, she said nothing then. "I don't know. I told you I can't remember." "Right." He leaned back in his chair. "Well, whatever it was, they did a number on your nav system, professionally too. Someone didn't want you followed." "That was..." She paused, seeming to catch herself. That must have been frightening to be hunted like that. Kai studied her over his cup. In the workshop's harsh lighting, he could see the faint scars beneath her scales, old injuries, carefully healed, but still visible to a trained eye. Whatever her story was, this wasn't her first time running. "Get some rest," he said. Finally. "Tomorrow we start work. Fair warning, I'm not an easy boss." "Neither am I," she said. And there was something in her tone that made him believe it. That night, Kai lay awake listening to the storm building outside. Through the thin walls, he could hear Lyra moving restlessly on the cot he'd set up for her, occasionally murmuring in a language his translator couldn't parse. Once he could have sworn he heard her say something that sounded like a prayer or a promise. He'd taken in strays before. It never ended well. But something about this one was different. Maybe it was the way she'd looked at him when she first woke up, not with fear or suspicion, but with a kind of careful evaluation, like she was measuring him against some standard he couldn't see. Or maybe he'd just been alone too long. Either way, he'd committed now. He'd fix her ship. She'd help with his work, and then she'd leave. Simple, clean, no complications. Outside, lightning split the sky, and for just a moment, he thought he saw shapes moving in the storm. Angular silhouettes that didn't belong to any natural phenomenon. But when he looked again, there was nothing but sand and wind in the endless desert night. Somewhere in the darkness, a woman who called herself Lyra sat awake, her fingers tracing the hidden symbols beneath her bow weave. Symbols that marked her as the last legitimate heir to an empire spanning 1,000 worlds. She thought of the message she'd sent before the crash, encrypted in a format only her most trusted allies would recognize. She thought of the betrayal that had driven her here, to this forgotten world, and this curious human who fixed broken things with gentle hands and asked no questions. And she thought of the ancient ritual of her people, the choosing that could only be made in extremity when all masks were stripped away and only truth remained. He fixed her ship in silence. She whispered to the darkness in her native tongue, the words of the ritual as old as her civilization, never asking who she really was. But that was only the beginning of the choosing. Time would tell if this silent engineer was worthy of the rest. In the morning they would begin work. She would hide her nature, play the role of the grateful refugee, and learn what kind of man fate had delivered her to. And somewhere between the sparks of welding torches and the quiet rhythm of shared labor, she would make her choice. The storm raged on, but inside the workshop, two strangers began their dance of secrets and silence, neither knowing that the galaxy itself would pivot on the axis of their meeting. The days fell into a rhythm that surprised them both with its ease. Mornings began before the first sun, when the air was still cool enough to work without environment suits. Kai would find Lyra already awake, studying his equipment with an intensity that bordered on reverence, her fingers hovering over circuits and connections as if reading them by touch alone. "You don't sleep much," he observed on their 4th day together, handing her a cup of the bitter stimulant that passed for coffee on Geor 9. "Neither do you," she countered, accepting the cup with a grateful nod. The way she wrapped both hands around it, savoring the warmth, was oddly endearing. "I heard you working until past midnight. Fair point." He moved to his workbench where a damaged atmospheric processor awaited his attention. "That thing's been giving me trouble for weeks. Thought I'd finally figured out the problem." The feedback loop in the tertiary filtration system. She joined him at the bench, peering at the dismantled unit. The resonance frequency is off by about 3%. It's causing microfractures in the crystalline matrix. Kai turned to stare at her. How could you possibly know that? She froze, that careful neutrality sliding over her features again. I lucky guess. That's one hell of a guess. He picked up a diagnostic tool, ran it over the component she'd indicated. Sure enough, 2.7% variance in the resonance frequency. You sure you don't remember your past? Because that's advanced atmospheric engineering fragments, she said quietly. Sometimes things just come to me like muscle memory. But for knowledge. He let it go, but filed the information away on whatever her background. She'd been educated extensively, the kind of education that didn't come cheap in any system. They worked in companionable silence for the next hour. Lyra proving herself an able assistant. She anticipated his needs, handing him tools before he asked, spotting potential problems before they manifested. When they finally got the processor running smoothly, she actually smiled. A real one this time, not the careful expression she usually wore. Nice work, Kai said, watching the readout stabilize. Might make a decent engineer out of you yet. I had a good teacher. The compliment slipped out before she could stop it, and he saw her stiffened slightly, as if she'd revealed too much. But something warm unfurled in his chest at her words. It had been a long time since anyone had said anything kind about his work. Too long. The afternoon heat drove them inside where they turned their attention to her ship. Kai had hauled the most critical components back to the workshop, spreading them across several tables like a three-dimensional puzzle. The drive core is salvageable, he explained, pointing to the antimatter containment unit. But we'll need to fabricate new injection chambers. The originals are, well, they're modern art now. Lyra ran her fingers along a piece of twisted metal that had once been part of the hull. Can you replicate them? The specifications must be exact, or the containment field will collapse. I've got a molecular printer that should handle it, assuming we can extract the blueprints from your ship's computer. He gestured to the partially fried core. That's tomorrow's project. Tonight, we focus on the power distribution system. They worked until the second sunset, breaking only for a meal of reconstituted vegetables and protein paste. Lyra had stopped complaining about the food after the second day, though he caught her staring wistfully at the meal sometimes, as if remembering better times. Tell me about Earth, she said suddenly as they ate. I've heard stories, but I've never been there. Kai shrugged. Not much to tell. Left when I was 20, never looked back. It's crowded, polluted, and everyone's trying to climb over everyone else to get ahead. The frontier is better, at least here. The dangers are honest ones. You don't miss it. Having other humans around. Humans are overrated, he said, then caught her expression. Present company accepted. Of course. That earned him another real smile. I'm not human, though. Not entirely. Close enough for frontier work. He pushed his empty plate aside. What about you? Your home world must be something special to produce tech like what you're carrying. Her expression shuddered. I wish I could tell you the fragments I remember. They're like dreams, beautiful and terrible and just out of reach. That night he woke to the sound of her voice drifting through the thin walls. She was speaking in that liquid language again, but this time he recognized the cadence. She was reciting something. Poetry maybe, or scripture, or the universal translator caught fragments in the time of choosing. When stars align with hearts, the bond that transcends blood. He lay still, listening until her voice faded back into silence. The next morning brought a sandstorm, not one of the major ones that could last for days, but enough to keep them inside. Kai used the time to teach Lyra his filing system, such as it was, and the intricacies of dealing with temperamental mining equipment. The key, he explained as they repaired a hydraulic actuator, is to understand that these machines have personality. This one, for instance, likes to stick at exactly 43% extension. No idea why, but if you know that, you can compensate. You talk about them like they're alive, she observed, adjusting her grip on the component they were holding. Spend enough time with machines, they start to feel that way. More reliable than people most of the time. He applied sealant to a worn gasket. They don't lie to you, don't abandon you, don't change their minds about what they want. Is that experience talking? He glanced at her, surprised by the directness of the question. Maybe you planning to psychoanalyze me? No. She met his gaze steadily, just trying to understand. Understand what? Why someone with your skills is hiding on a dead-end planet instead of making a fortune in the core systems? Same reason you ended up here, I imagine, he said. Sometimes the price of staying is higher than the cost of running. She nodded slowly, and he saw recognition in her eyes. Whatever had driven her to Galor 9, she understood that calculation intimately. They were interrupted by an alert from his security system. Something was approaching through the storm. Kai checked the monitors, frowning at the readings. Local wildlife? Lyra asked, looking over his shoulder. Wrong profile. Too big. Moving too purposefully. He grabbed his weapon, checking the charge. Stay here. I can help. Stay here. He sealed his environment suit and headed for the airlock. The storm had reduced visibility to maybe 20 meters, but his suit sensors painted a clear picture. 3 large shapes moving in formation, definitely not native to Gaylord 9. As they got closer, he could make out details, hexapedal locomotion, armored carapaces, and what looked like energy weapons grafted to their forelimbs. Scavenger drones, he muttered. But whose? Before he could decide whether to engage or retreat. Lyra was beside him, having somehow donned a spare environment suit in record time. But instead of his weapon, she held something else, a device he didn't recognize, all flowing curves and pulsing lights. I told you to stay inside, he growled. And let you face them alone? I don't think so. She raised the device, and suddenly the air shimmered with hard light constructs, a barrier between them and the approaching drones. Besides, you don't know what these are. And you do? She didn't answer. But the way she held herself, balanced, ready, professionally calm, told him everything. When the drones opened fire, she was already moving, the barrier shifting to intercept the plasma bolts with casual precision. Kai didn't waste time on questions. He'd survived 30 years on the frontier by adapting to rapidly changing situations. He laid down suppressing fire while Lyra did something complex with her device. The air suddenly smelled of ozone and exotic particles. One of the drones convulsed and collapsed, its systems fried from the inside out. The other 2 pressed forward, but Lyra was already moving faster than anyone in an environment suit should be able to move. She touched the second drone with her device, and it simply stopped, frozen mid-stride like a statue. The third drone targeted her specifically, its weapons charging for what looked like a kill shot. Kai didn't think. He just moved, tackling her out of the path of a beam that would have cut her in half. They rolled together in the sand, and for a moment he was acutely aware of her warmth, the way she fit against him. Then she was up again, and the device in her hand had reconfigured itself into something that looked very much like a weapon. One shot, precisely placed, and the last drone crumpled. They stood there in the settling sand, breathing hard. The storm was already beginning to bury the drone remains. So, Kai said conversationally. Want to tell me what those were? Hunter-killers, she said, her voice tight. Automated. They track biological signatures across star systems. She turned to look at him through her visor. I'm sorry. I didn't think they'd find me this quickly. They're after you specifically, she nodded. I need to disable their transponders before they can upload their findings. They worked quickly. LRA extracting components from the drones with practiced efficiency while Kai kept watch. Back in the workshop, she spread the components on a table, her expression grim. "Someone very powerful wants me found." She said, "These aren't cheap. Military grade with enhancements I've never seen before. Someone from your past that you conveniently don't remember." She looked up at him, and for the first time he saw real vulnerability in her eyes. "What if I told you that remembering might get us both killed? I'd say we're already halfway there." He pulled off his helmet, running a hand through sweat, damp hair. "Look, everyone who comes here is running from something. That's the unspoken rule. We don't ask, we don't judge. But if your past is going to come knocking with military hardware, I need to know what I'm dealing with." She was quiet for a long moment. "Then I'm not who I said I was. I figured that out when you reconfigured alien tech with your bare hands. No, I mean," she took a breath. Lyra isn't my name. It's what I chose to be called when I decided to leave everything behind. My real name. My real name comes with responsibilities I'm no longer willing to bear. A noble, then. Or military. High-ranking. Judging by the hardware chasing you. Something like that." She began systematically destroying the drone components, ensuring no trace of their encounter remained. There was a conflict. People I trusted turned against me. I ran rather than fight, and now they need me dead to legitimize their actions. "Civil war, coup," she corrected, though they'd call it a peaceful transition of power. Hard to argue when all the witnesses are dead. Kai absorbed this, watching her work. Despite everything, he found he wasn't angry about the deception. If anything, her story resonated with his own reasons for choosing exile. "Well," he said finally, "good thing I've got experience keeping a low profile. We'll need to adjust our security protocols, maybe relocate some of the more sensitive equipment, and you'll need to teach me how to use whatever that thing was you were waving around." She looked at him in surprise. "You're not throwing me out." "You helped fix my atmospheric processor," he said with a shrug. "Do you know how long I've been fighting with that thing? Besides, we have a deal. I fix your ship. You help with my work." "Nothing's changed." "Everything's changed," she said softly. "They know I'm in the system now. They'll send more than drones next time. Then we'd better work faster." He moved to his computer, pulling up the work schedule. "If we push hard, maybe we can get your ship operational in 3 weeks instead of 2 months. "Why?" She joined him at the screen. "Why help me knowing what it could cost you?" He was quiet for a moment, remembering another time, another place. When he'd been the one running. When a stranger's kindness had been the difference between capture and freedom. "Because everybody deserves a second chance," he said finally. "Even mysteriously well-trained nobles with a talent for alien tech." She laughed, actually laughed, and the sound transformed her face. "I'm going to tell you something," she said. "And you're going to think I'm crazy. Try me. Back home, there's an old tradition. When someone saves your life, you're bound to them until you can return the favor." She met his eyes. "You've saved mine twice now. Once from the desert, once from the drones. I owe you 2 life debts." "I don't believe in debts," Kai said. "Makes things complicated." Nevertheless, she reached out, hesitated, then placed her hand over his on the keyboard. Her touch was warm, even through the biometallic interfaces. "I pay my debts, Kai. All of them." That night, as they worked side by side to reinforce the workshop's defenses, something shifted between them. The careful distance Lyra had maintained began to erode, replaced by something warmer, more genuine. She laughed at his terrible jokes, shared stories of her training, carefully edited to remove identifying details, and even attempted to improve their dinner with spices she synthesized from the molecular printer. "This is actually edible," Kai said, surprised. "I didn't know you could make the printer do that." "You just need to understand the molecular structure of flavor compounds," she explained, clearly pleased with his reaction. "It's basically chemistry with taste buds. Is there anything you're not good at?" "Plenty," she said. "I'm terrible at politics for one. Also dancing and apparently staying hidden. Dancing, I can believe, but terrible at politics. You? Why do you think I ended up here? She gestured around the workshop. A better politician would have seen the coup coming, would have built alliances, made compromises. Instead, I trusted the wrong people and lost everything. Their loss, Kai said without thinking. Anyone who'd throw away someone like you is an idiot. She went very still, and he realized what he'd said. Heat crept up his neck. I mean, you're obviously skilled, he clarified. Good with tech, quick learner. Any operation would be lucky to have you. Kai. She waited until he looked at her. Thank you for everything. I don't think I've said that enough. You've said it plenty. No, I mean it. You didn't have to take me in. You didn't have to trust me. You certainly didn't have to keep helping me after today. But you did. She paused, seeming to wrestle with something. Where I come from, trust is a luxury. Everyone has an angle. Everyone wants something. But you just help because it's the right thing to do. Don't make me out to be some kind of hero, he said, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. I'm just a guy who fixes things. Maybe that's what makes you heroic, she said softly. They were standing close now, close enough that he could see the subtle patterns in her scales, the way they shifted color with her breathing, close enough to notice that her eyes weren't just one color, but a constantly shifting spectrum, like looking at stars through a prism. The moment stretched between them, fragile and full of possibility. Then a proximity alarm chimed, and they stepped apart. The spell broken. Probably just local wildlife this time, Kai said, checking the monitors. But we should, she kissed him. It was quick, almost hesitant, a brief press of lips that sent electricity down his spine. When she pulled back, her expression was a mix of defiance and uncertainty. I'm sorry, she started. I shouldn't have shut up, he said, and kissed her properly. This time her lips were soft and warm with a faint electrical tingle that probably came from her bio-integrated systems. She made a small sound of surprise that shifted into something else as his arms came around her. For a moment the universe narrowed to just this. The two of them in a cluttered workshop on a nowhere planet, finding something neither had been looking for. When they finally broke apart, both breathing unsteadily, she rested her forehead against his. This complicates things, she murmured. Everything about you is complicated, he pointed out. Why should this be different? She laughed, the sound vibrating through him where they touched. Fair point. The alarm chimed again, more insistently with a mutual sigh. They separated to check the monitors. It was just a sand devil, harmless but loud, scraping against the outer walls in its search for metal to consume. Lyra gestured vaguely toward her sleeping area. It's late. Yeah. But neither of them moved. Lyra, or whatever your real name is. Lyra, she said firmly. That's who I choose to be. The other person. The one they're hunting. She died in that crash. Let her stay dead. He nodded, understanding more than she probably realized. Good night, Lyra. Good night, Kai. Good night. But as she turned to go, she paused. That tradition I mentioned about life debts. There's another part to it. A choosing that can be made when she shook her head. Never mind. Sleep well. She disappeared into her quarters, leaving Kai standing alone in the workshop, his lips still tingling from her kiss. Outside, the sand devil continued its scraping. And somewhere in the vast desert, more hunters were undoubtedly searching. 3 weeks. He had 3 weeks to get her ship running before whatever was chasing her arrived in force. 3 weeks to figure out what this thing building between them meant. 3 weeks to decide if some chances were worth taking, no matter the cost. He touched his lips, still feeling the echo of her warmth, and knew his decision was already made. In her quarters, Lyra sat on her narrow cot, fingers pressed to her lips. She'd broken protocol, shattered the careful distance she'd maintained. But when he'd looked at her, not as a refugee or a problem to solve, but as a woman, something inside her had cracked open. She pulled out the small device she'd hidden among her belongings, the one piece of her old life she couldn't bear to destroy. The royal seal glowed softly in her palm, carrying the weight of 1,000 years of tradition. "I choose you," she whispered in her native tongue, the words of the ancient ritual. "Not for your bloodline or your power, but for your worth." The seal pulsed once, acknowledging her declaration. The choosing had begun, whether Kai knew it or not. Now came the harder part, proving to both of them that some bonds were worth more than crowns or kingdoms. Outside, the storm was building again, but inside the workshop, two damaged souls had found something worth protecting. And sometimes in the vast darkness between stars, that was the greatest treasure of all. The kiss changed everything and nothing. They still woke before dawn, still shared bitter coffee while reviewing the day's work, still moved around each other in the workshop with practiced efficiency. But now there were moments, fingertips brushing as they passed tools, glances that lingered too long, the space between them charged with unspoken possibility. Kai found himself watching her when she wasn't looking, cataloging the small things that made her unique. The way she bit her lower lip when concentrating, how she hummed tunelessly while working, snippets of melodies from a world he'd never see, the grace in her movements even when hefting heavy components, a fluidity that spoke of combat training disguised as mere dexterity. For her part, Lyra seemed to be waging an internal war. He'd catch her starting to reach for him, then pulling back, opening her mouth to say something, then changing the subject. The careful distance she'd maintained was crumbling, but something held her back from closing the gap entirely. "The navigation matrix is more damaged than I thought," she announced on their 10th day together, her voice carefully neutral as she examined the burnt circuitry. "The quantum entanglement processors are completely fried. Can we rebuild them? Not with the equipment here." She set the component down with unusual force. "We'd need a proper fabrication facility, or at least access to a trading post with black market connections." Kai leaned against the workbench, studying her tense shoulders. "There's a trading station about 3 days from here. Zara's Reach. Not exactly legal, but they don't ask questions if your credits are good." "It's too dangerous," she said immediately. "Too exposed. Someone might recognize." She caught herself. "Might report a damaged ship looking for parts. So we go careful. Change your appearance. Keep a low profile. I've got contacts there who owe me favors." She turned to face him, and he saw the conflict in her eyes. "You'd come with me? You think I'd let you go alone? Besides, I need supplies anyway. Haven't made a run in months, Kai." She stepped closer, then seemed to think better of it. "The risk?" "Life is risk," he interrupted. "But we need those parts if we're going to get you off-world before your friends show up with something bigger than drones." That night, they prepared for the journey. Kai serviced the rover, adding armor plating and checking the weapon systems he usually kept disabled. Lyra worked on altering her appearance, using the molecular printer to create synthetic skin patches that covered her most distinctive features, dyeing her hair with chemicals that would mask its natural luminescence. "How do I look?" she asked, stepping into the workshop light. The transformation was remarkable. Gone was the ethereal alien beauty, replaced by someone who could pass for human at a casual glance. But to Kai's eyes, she was still unmistakably herself. The way she moved, the tilt of her head, the depth in those color-shifting eyes. "Different," he said. "But still you." She smiled, sad and knowing. "Sometimes I wonder who me really is anymore." "The person standing in front of me," he said simply. "That's all that matters." She crossed to him, then quick and decisive, and kissed him again. This time there was no hesitation, no pulling back. Her hands tangled in his hair as he pulled her close, and for a moment the universe contracted to just this heat and connection and the thundering of synchronized heartbeats. When they broke apart, she stayed in the circle of his arms. "I'm being selfish," she murmured against his chest. "I should stay away from you, should leave before." "Try it," he challenged. "See how far you get before I drag you back." She laughed, the sound muffled by his shirt. "My protector. You don't even know what you're protecting me from." "Don't need to. You're here. You need help. End of story." She pulled back to look at him, something fierce and tender in her expression. "In my culture, we have a saying, the heart knows its home before the mind admits the address." What's that supposed to mean? Instead of answering, she kissed him again, and he decided the translation could wait. They left before dawn, the rover loaded with trade goods and defensive equipment. Lyra wore goggles and a sand mask that further obscured her features, while Kai plotted a course that would keep them away from the main routes. The desert of Galor 9 was beautiful in its desolation. Ancient impact craters created concentric circles of colored sand, minerals from the planet's core exposed by cosmic violence. Crystalline formations jutted from the ground like frozen lightning, casting rainbow shadows in the early light. "It's magnificent," Lyra breathed, lowering her mask to better see the view. So different from she stopped abruptly. "From home," Kai prompted gently. She nodded. "Everything there was controlled, managed. Nature existed only where we allowed it, in forms we approved this." She gestured at the chaotic beauty around them. "This is honest, raw, real. Most people think it's ugly. Most people are fools." She turned to him. "Don't you see? There's no pretense here. The desert doesn't care about your bloodline or your titles or your politics. It simply is." They made good time the first day, camping that night in the shelter of a collapsed mining platform. Kai had packed decent rations for the trip. Nothing fancy, but better than their usual fare. They sat close together as the temperature dropped, sharing warmth and watching the stars emerge. "Tell me about them," Lyra said suddenly. "The stars from your perspective." So he did, pointing out constellations and navigation markers, sharing stories from his years of travel. She listened with an intensity that made him self-conscious, as if she were memorizing not just his words, but the way he said them. "That cluster there," he indicated a group of blue-white stars. "They call it the Wanderer's Rest, supposed to guide lost souls home. Do you believe that? I believe stars are fusion reactors that happen to make pretty patterns. But sometimes," he shrugged, "sometimes it's nice to think there's more to it." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Where I come from, stars are political assets. This one belongs to House so-and-so. That system is contested territory. These trade routes are controlled by such and such faction. I never learned to just see them. You're learning now. I'm learning a lot of things." Her hand found his in the darkness, things they never taught in the palace schools. He squeezed her fingers gently. "Like what? Like how to rebuild an atmospheric processor, how to make terrible coffee taste almost drinkable. How to—" She paused. "How to trust someone who has no agenda beyond fixing what's broken." "Everyone has an agenda." "What's yours?" He thought about it. "Keep breathing. Keep working. Maybe find something worth staying for instead of just running from. Have you found it?" Instead of answering, he lifted their joined hands and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. She shivered, and he didn't think it was from the cold. The second day brought trouble. They were navigating a narrow canyon when Kai's instruments detected energy signatures ahead. Multiple vehicles, powered down but occupied. "Raiders?" Lyra asked, already checking her weapon. "Could be or could be travelers playing it safe." He adjusted their course, looking for an alternate route. "Either way, we go around." But the canyon walls were too steep, and backtracking would cost them hours. Finally, Kai made the call to proceed slowly, weapons ready, but not displayed. The camp came into view around a bend, 3 heavy transports arranged defensively with armed sentries visible. Definitely not ordinary travelers. As their rover approached, Kai counted at least a dozen fighters, all sporting the mismatched armor and weapons of professional mercenaries. "Steady," he murmured to Lyra. "Let me do the talking." One of the sentries stepped forward, weapon casual, but ready. "Long way from anywhere, friend. What's your business?" "Same as anyone's out here," Kai replied easily, "trying to make a living. We're headed to Zara's Reach for supplies." The sentry's eyes lingered on Lyra, trying to see past her disguise. "Don't get many couples out this way. Your woman doesn't talk." "Throat injury," Kai lied smoothly. "Damaged her vocal cords. We're hoping to find medical supplies at the Reach." That's so the mercenary didn't look convinced. "Well, here's the thing. This here's a toll road going to cost you to pass." Kai had expected this. Raiders always wanted something. Credits, supplies, information. The trick was knowing how much to give without appearing weak. "What's the toll? Half your cargo, or the man's smile turned predatory? Your woman keeps us company for a few hours. Been a long time since we've seen anything so pretty. Even covered up like that." Kai's hand moved to his weapon, but Lyra touched his arm. When he glanced at her, she made a subtle hand gesture. "Wait, watch. Now that's not very neighborly," Kai said, keeping his voice level. "How about 20% of the cargo and we forget this conversation happened?" The sentry laughed. "Negotiate all you want, friend, but you're outnumbered and outgunned. So here's the new deal. We take everything, including the woman, and maybe we let you walk out of here. Maybe." That's when Lyra moved. She was out of the rover before anyone could react, her disguised weapon already configured. The sentry had time for one surprised grunt before she touched him with it, and he collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. Not dead, Kai could see him breathing, but completely incapacitated. The camp erupted into chaos. Mercenaries scrambled for positions, weapons swinging toward the threat. But Lyra was already moving, faster than anyone had a right to in the loose sand, using their rover for cover. "I count 14 hostiles," she said, her voice calm. Despite the situation, the vocal modulator she'd activated made her sound different, older, rougher. 2 snipers on the ridge, 3 behind the middle transport. The rest are spreading out to flank. Kai didn't waste time being impressed. He grabbed his rifle and laid down, suppressing fire, giving Lyra room to maneuver. What followed was a brutal lesson in why picking fights with unknown opponents was a bad idea. Lyra moved like a force of nature, her combat training no longer hidden behind careful clumsiness. She flowed between opponents, her weapon shifting configurations, stun, disable, occasionally something more permanent when forced. Kai covered her, his years of frontier survival serving him well. But it was clear who the real warrior was. In under 3 minutes, it was over. 14 mercenaries down, most unconscious, a few groaning in pain. Lyra stood in the center of the carnage, barely breathing hard. "We should go," she said, her voice still modulated. "They'll have friends." They drove in tense silence for an hour before Kai finally spoke. "So, want to tell me where you learned to fight like that?" "Royal Guard Academy," she said quietly, dropping the voice modulator. "Started when I was 7. By the time I was 15, I could have taken twice that many. But you don't like it." "The fighting." "I'm good at it," she corrected. "That's not the same as liking it. Every person I put down today was someone's child, maybe someone's parent." They made bad choices, but she shrugged. "Violence should be the last option, not the first." "Could have fooled me the way you moved out there. Training takes over muscle memory." But afterward, she flexed her fingers, staring at them. "Afterward, I remember why I ran instead of fighting for my throne." They reached Zara's Reach as the second sun was setting. The trading post was built into a natural cave system, expanded over decades into a sprawling maze of shops, bars, and less reputable establishments, perfect for those who needed to do business without official oversight. Kai guided them to a mid-level hostel he'd used before, run by a grizzled veteran named Marco, who asked no questions as long as credits changed hands. Their room was small but clean with a shower that actually produced hot water. Luxury after days in the desert. "I'll head out after dark," Kai said, checking his equipment. "My contact runs a shop in the lower levels. Should have what we need. I'm coming with you." "It's safer if you stay." "We've established I can take care of myself," she interrupted. "Besides, I need to inspect the components personally. Some of what we need is very specific." He couldn't argue with that logic, though something protective in him wanted to. They ventured out after full dark, keeping to the shadows and less traveled passages. The shop was exactly as Kai remembered, cluttered, dimly lit, and stuffed with salvage from 100 different worlds. The owner, a spindly humanoid called Tex, brightened when he saw Kai. "Well, well, the hermit emerges. Thought you died out there, my friend." "Still breathing," Kai confirmed. "Need some specialized components. Navigation matrices, quantum processors, the kind of stuff that fell off the back of a military transport." Tex's elongated features sharpened with interest. "Expensive tastes. What happened? You're finally building that yacht you always talked about. Something like that. Can you help or not?" "Maybe, but it'll cost, and I'll need to see specifications." Lyra stepped forward, producing a data pad with the required components. Tex studied it, his expression growing more incredulous with each line. "This is... Where did you even find a ship that uses this architecture? This is cutting edge, maybe 5 years ahead of anything on the market." "Can you get it or not?" Kai pressed. "I can get maybe 60% of this. The rest." Tex made a helpless gesture. "You'd need connections I don't have. But there's someone who might help. Lady named Vera runs a salvage operation out of the old mining district. She specializes in the impossible." "I know Vera," Kai said slowly. "We didn't part on good terms. Then you'd better hope she's in a forgiving mood, because what you're looking for, she's your only shot." They made the purchases Tex could fulfill, spending a significant portion of Kai's carefully hoarded credits. As they prepared to leave, the shop's alarms chimed softly. "Security sweep," Tex muttered. "They're early tonight. You two better scarce. Use the back exit." But as they slipped out the rear of the shop, Kai spotted uniforms converging from multiple directions. Not local security, these moved with military precision, carrying scanners that looked far too advanced for a backwater trading post. "They're here for me," Lyra breathed. Somehow they tracked. "Doesn't matter how." Kai cut her off, pulling her into an alcove. "We need to get back to the rover." But the soldiers were already spreading out, methodical and thorough. Their scanners would pick up biosignatures soon enough, no matter where they hid. "There's another way," Lyra said suddenly. "Do you trust me?" Stupid question. She pulled out a device he hadn't seen before, smaller than her weapon, covered in symbols that seemed to shift and writhe. "This is going to feel strange," she warned, then activated it. The world twisted, colors inverted, sounds stretched and compressed, and Kai felt his atoms trying to go in different directions. Then suddenly, they were elsewhere. A maintenance tunnel 2 levels down, judging by the utility markings. "Phase shifter," Lyra explained, as Kai fought not to vomit. "Short range, emergency use only. I've been saving it." "Next time, more warning," he managed. They navigated back to the hostel through maintenance passages, avoiding the increasing security presence. Once safe in their room, Lyra began pacing, agitation clear in every movement. They shouldn't have found us this quickly unless she stopped. The drones. I must have missed a tracker or someone in that merc camp sent word. Kai suggested, "Doesn't matter now. We've got what we could. Time to leave the navigation components. We'll figure it out. But we can't stay here." She nodded, then surprised him by crossing the room and wrapping her arms around him. "I'm sorry," she murmured against his chest. "I keep bringing danger to your door. Our door," he corrected, holding her close. "Whatever this is, we're in it together." She looked up at him, and he saw tears threatening in those remarkable eyes. "You don't understand. The people hunting me what they're capable of." "Then tell me," he said simply. "Trust me with the truth." For a long moment, she was silent. Then was Crown Princess Lorelei of the Ashanti Confederation, sole heir to the Crystal Throne, keeper of the 17 Seals, voice of the stellar winds. She laughed bitterly. Impressive titles for someone hiding in a cave. Kai absorbed this revelation, pieces clicking into place. The advanced tech, the combat training, the way she sometimes carried herself like she expected reality to bend around her will. "Okay," he said finally. "So your royalty changes nothing." She blinked. "I just told you I'm heir to a multi-system empire, and you say it changes nothing. You're still the woman who fixed my atmospheric processor. Still the person who hums off key when she's happy. Still," he touched her face gently, "still choosing to be here with me. For whatever reason, the reason is you," she said fiercely. "Don't you see? In all my life, surrounded by courtiers and sycophants and political alliances, you're the first person who ever saw me. Not the princess, not the prize to be won. Just me." "I see you," he confirmed. "Question is, what do you see when you look at me home?" she whispered, and kissed him like she was drowning, and he was heir later. As they prepared to flee into the desert night, Kai asked, "What happens now? We can't run forever." Lyra finished loading their gear, her movements efficient despite the turmoil of the evening. "There's a way, the rite of dissolution. If I formally renounce my claim, pledge myself to another path, they have to accept it. But it requires returning to the Confederation, standing before the Council." And she hesitated, presenting my chosen alternate path. "My chosen," she couldn't finish. "Your chosen what?" "Lifemate," she said quietly. "The tradition is ancient. A royal can abandon their claim only if they choose love over duty. But the choice must be genuine, tested, proven before the council." Kai stared at her. "Are you saying I'm saying we have 3 weeks to decide if what's between us is real enough to stake both our lives on?" She met his eyes steadily. "I've already decided. But you deserve time to think about what you'd be giving up, what you'd be risking." "I don't need 3 weeks," he started. But she placed a finger over his lips. "Yes, you do. Because once we start down this path, there's no going back. The council doesn't accept half measures. Either we convince them our bond is true, or she didn't need to finish." They slipped out of Zara's reach in darkness, leaving behind the hunters, and taking with them questions that would reshape both their futures, in the rover racing across the desert toward an uncertain dawn. Kai reached over and took Lyra's hand. "Whatever you decide," she said softly, "I want you to know this time with you has been worth everything I've lost." "Don't talk like that," he said roughly. "We're not at the ending yet." "No," she agreed, squeezing his fingers. "We're just beginning." Behind them, the trading post erupted in activity as more ships arrived, disgorging soldiers who would find only empty rooms and cold trails. Ahead, the workshop waited, their sanctuary in the storm. 3 weeks to build a ship, 3 weeks to forge a bond strong enough to defy an empire, 3 weeks to decide if love could truly conquer duty. The desert stretched endlessly before them, but for the first time since arriving on Galor 9, Kai felt like he was running towards something instead of away. The attack came without warning. 3 days after their return from Zara's reach, Kai woke to the screech of proximity alarms and the acrid smell of ionized air. Through the workshop's reinforced windows, he saw the shimmer of transport beams depositing armored figures onto the sand. Not mercenaries this time. These moved with the coordinated precision of elite forces. "Lyra!" He rolled out of bed, grabbing his weapon. "We've got company." She was already up fully dressed as if she'd been expecting this. Royal Guard, she confirmed, peering through a scope. 3rd Battalion, judging by their formation. They're not here to talk. How many? 20, maybe 25, plus whatever's still on their ship. She turned to him, her expression carefully controlled. They're here for both of us now. My biosignature and yours. They'll have tagged you as an accomplice. Good. Saves us the trouble of explaining our relationship. He checked his rifle's charge. What's the play? Before she could answer, an amplified voice boomed across the desert. Princess Lyra, by order of the Provisional Council, you are commanded to surrender yourself for transport back to Ashanti Prime. You have 60 seconds to comply. Provisional Council, Lyra spat. They're not even pretending anymore. She moved to her equipment stash, pulling out items he'd never seen before. We can't fight them all, but maybe. The workshop's blast doors suddenly groaned as something heavy impacted them. Through the windows, Kai saw soldiers setting up a siege cannon. 30 seconds, Princess. Don't make this harder than necessary. I need to go out there, Lyra said suddenly. If I surrender like hell, Kai grabbed her arm. We stick together, remember? They'll kill you. They'll try. He pulled her toward the workshop's hidden exit. Move now, argue later. They slipped out through the maintenance tunnel as the blast doors began to buckle. Behind them, the workshop, Kai's home for 3 years, started to collapse under sustained fire. Everything he'd built, everything he'd salvaged reduced to rubble in seconds. But there was no time for mourning. They emerged 50 meters from the main structure, using scattered equipment for cover. The guard hadn't expected them to have a back exit, a crucial oversight that bought them precious seconds. Their ship, Lyra pointed to the sleek vessel hovering beyond the perimeter. If we can reach it through 20-plus elite soldiers, 23, she corrected. And yes, trust me. She pulled out another of her devices, this one larger, covered in the same shifting symbols. When I activate this, run straight for their ship. Don't stop. Don't look back. Don't engage unless you have to. What are you going to do? Instead of answering, she kissed him hard. Remember? Straight line, maximum speed. She activated the device. Reality screamed. The air itself seemed to tear open, revealing glimpses of somewhere else. A vast hall of crystal and light filled with figures in elaborate robes. The Royal Guard froze, their training wearing with the impossibility of what they were seeing. The throne room, one soldier breathed. She's opened a portal to, it's a projection, another shouted. But the damage was done. Half the squad had turned to face this new threat. Their formation breaking now. Lyra grabbed Kai's hand and they ran. The guards recovered quickly, but not quickly enough. Lyra's combat skills turned from impressive to superhuman as she carved a path through their ranks. Her weapon shifted configurations faster than Kai could follow. Stun, shield, blade, back to stun. She moved like water, like wind, like nothing human. But even she couldn't dodge everything. A plasma bolt caught her shoulder, spinning her around. Another clipped her leg. She kept moving, kept fighting, but Kai could see the toll it was taking. They were 10 meters from the ship when a figure stepped out of its shadow, tall, austere, wearing robes instead of armor. The man radiated authority like heat. "Enough," he said, and somehow that single word carried enough weight to freeze everyone in place. "Lyra Lai, you've caused considerable trouble." "High Counselor Theron," Lyra said, her voice steady despite her injuries. "Still doing Marcus's dirty work." "I see. Lord Marcus rules by the will of the Council." Theron replied, "Your abdication left a void. He merely filled it." "My abdication? Is that what he's calling assassination attempts? Now the past is immaterial. You will return with us. Face the Council. Accept your fate with dignity." His gaze shifted to Kai. "This one, however, is unnecessary. Guards. No." Lyra stepped in front of Kai, her weapon raised. "He's under my protection. You're in no position to protect anyone, child. You can barely stand." It was true blood. That luminescent blue seeped through multiple wounds. Her weapon shook in her grip, but still she stood between Kai and the guards, immovable. "I invoke the right of selection," she said clearly. "By blood and bond, by choice and consecration, I name this man my chosen consort. Any harm to him is harm to me." The expression darkened. "The right of selection requires ratification by the council. You are no longer. I am blood of the first dynasty." Lyra interrupted. "Heir by birth, not by politics? The right is mine whether the council acknowledges it or not. Even so, he must prove worthy. The trials, he'll face them." She glanced back at Kai, something desperate in her eyes. "Won't you?" Kai had no idea what trials they were discussing, but the answer was obvious. "Yes." Theron studied them for a long moment. "Very well, guards. Bring them both. Carefully. The princess requires medical attention." The guards moved in, and Kai saw Lyra's shoulders slump with relief or defeat. He couldn't tell which. As biocuffs locked around his wrists, he caught her eye. "Together," he mouthed. She nodded fractionally before consciousness finally left her. The journey to Ashanti Prime took 6 days through hyperspace. Kai spent them in a cell that was luxurious by prisoner standards. Soft bed, decent food, even entertainment options, but still very much a cell. On the 3rd day, Thien visited. "You have no idea what you've involved yourself in," the High Counselor said without preamble. "The princess is playing a game that will likely get you both killed." "Funny. From where I'm sitting, you're the ones playing games. You think this is about politics?" The laughed humorlessly. "Boy, the Ashanti Confederation spans 17 systems. Trillion of lives depend on stable leadership. Laialai's romantic notions threaten everything we've built because she wants to choose her own path, because she is the last of her line." The composure cracked slightly. "The bioneural matrices that control our defense systems, our transportation networks, our very civilization. They respond only to royal DNA. Without a legitimate heir, everything collapses." Kai absorbed this. "So force her to have children. Problem solved." "You think we haven't considered that?" "The matrices require willing participation. A child born of coercion would be rejected by the systems." Theron leaned forward. "She must choose to continue the line, which is why your presence complicates matters. I'm not going anywhere." "No." Theron touched a panel, and the wall became transparent, revealing medical imagery. "Do you know what the trials entail? Physical combat against enhanced champions. Mental challenges that have broken brilliant minds. Genetic manipulation to test compatibility at the cellular level. 9 out of 10 candidates die. Then I'll be the 10th who doesn't. You're not even augmented. You're baseline human with some mixed ancestry. You repair machines on a backwater planet." "What makes you think because she chose me?" Kai interrupted. "That's enough." Theron stared at him, something almost like pity in his expression. "Love is not enough, boy. Not here. Not for this. We'll see." The High Counselor left without another word. On the 5th day, they finally let him see Lyra. She was in a medical suite, surrounded by healing fields that made her skin glow softly. The wounds were closed, but she looked fragile in a way he'd never seen before. "Hey," she said softly as he entered. "They treating you okay?" "Like a prize pig before the slaughter, apparently." He sat beside her bed, careful not to disturb the equipment. "Theron paid me a visit, told me about the trials." Her face went carefully neutral. And I think you should have mentioned that accepting your proposal meant fighting enhanced killers. Would it have changed your answer?" He considered this. "No, but a heads up would have been nice." She laughed weakly. "I'm sorry. I thought I hoped we'd have more time that I could prepare you properly." "How long do I have?" The council convenes in 2 days. If they accept my right of selection, the trials begin immediately after. She reached for his hand. Kai, you don't have to do this. I can find another way. Stop. He squeezed her fingers gently. I'm not going anywhere. Just tell me what I need to know. So she did. For the next hour, she explained the history of the trials, the types of challenges he'd face, the ways previous candidates had succeeded or failed. It was sobering, terrifying, and absolutely insane. The first trial is combat, she finished. Usually against a guard champion, they'll expect you to fight with traditional weapons, blades, staffs, perhaps energy weapons, but the rules say only that you must defeat your opponent, not how. So I can fight dirty, you can fight smart, use their expectations against them. She paused. The second trial is mental, a construct reality where you face your deepest fears, your hidden shames. Many lose themselves in there. And the third, biological compatibility. She looked away. They'll test whether we can produce viable offspring, whether your genetics and mine can merge without creating problems. That sounds invasive. It is, but necessary from their perspective. She met his eyes again. That's why I need to tell you something about the choosing ceremony I performed. It wasn't just words, Kai. It started a biological process. My body is already beginning to adapt to yours, synchronizing on a cellular level. What does that mean? It means if you fail the trials, if they reject you. She swallowed hard. I'll die. My body won't accept another match. It's why the choosing is so rare. It's irreversible. Kai stared at her. You bet your life on me without asking. I bet my life on us, she corrected. And I'd do it again. You're insane. Probably. She smiled sadly. But I'm also right. I know you, Kai, better than you know yourself. Maybe you'll pass the trials because you have something none of the others had. What's that? You fix broken things. And right now the whole Confederation is broken. She pulled him down for a kiss, soft and desperate. So fix us, please. The council chamber was a study in intimidating architecture, soaring crystal spires, holographic star maps, tiers of seats filled with beings from across 17 systems. At the center on a throne that seemed to be carved from a single massive gem sat Lord Marcus. He was handsome in the way poisonous flowers were beautiful, attractive, until you noticed the danger underneath. When he smiled at Lyra, Kai understood immediately why she'd run. Cousin, Marcus said warmly, welcome home. We've been so worried. Spare me the performance, Lyra replied. She stood straight despite her injuries. Every inch the princess. I invoked the right of selection. I present my chosen consort for the trials. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Marcus's smile flickered. The right of selection. How quaint, but surely unnecessary. Your place is here beside me as we've always planned. As you planned, I choose another path. She took Kai's hand publicly. Officially, I choose him. A baseline human, someone called out. This is absurd. The blood chooses as it wills, Lyra said firmly. That is the law. The old law, Marcus corrected. Times have changed, cousin. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. No. Theron stood, surprising everyone. The princess has invoked the right. By law, we must allow the trial unless he looked at Kai. The candidate wishes to withdraw. I don't. Then it is decided. Theron's voice carried the weight of judgment. The trials will commence at dawn. May fate favor the worthy. That night, they gave Kai champions' quarters, luxurious rooms with a view of the city planet's glittering skyline. Lyra came to him after midnight, slipping past guards with ease. "Couldn't sleep," she said, curling into his arms. "Funny, me neither. Something about imminent death tends to keep me awake." She hit him lightly. "Don't joke. Not about this. How else should I handle it? I'm a mechanic about to fight super soldiers. You're more than that." She shifted to look at him. "Do you know why I really chose you? Not the romantic reasons. The real one. Enlighten me. Because you see what needs fixing, and you fix it. No ego, no agenda, just competence. Do you know how rare that is? Everyone here wants power, control, advancement. You just want things to work properly. That's not exactly heroic. It's the most heroic thing I've ever seen." She kissed him deeply. "Tomorrow, remember that. Don't try to be a warrior or a champion. Just be yourself. Fix the broken things, including you." "I'm not broken," she said. "Just misaligned like that atmospheric processor. Wrong frequency causing fractures. You showed me how to adjust, how to find the right resonance." They made love then, desperate and tender, knowing it might be their last chance. Afterward, as she traced patterns on his chest, Kai asked, "What happens if I win?" "Then the council has to accept our bond. I can renounce my claim officially, and we're free to leave. Go wherever we want. Maybe back to Gaylord 9 if there's anything left to salvage. And if I lose—" She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. "Then if you die in the trials, I'll follow within days. The bonding process is too advanced to reverse. If you live but fail, Marcus will claim me and you'll be exiled or executed. So no pressure." She laughed despite everything. None at all. Dawn came too soon. Guards arrived to escort Kai to the arena, a massive structure that could reshape itself according to the trial's needs. Millions would watch, either in person or through hollow feeds. The fate of the royal line had become the Confederation's favorite entertainment. In the preparation chamber, Kai was offered traditional armor and weapons. He declined most of it, keeping only light protection and selecting tools that felt familiar. A plasma cutter that reminded him of his workshop gear, a tactical scanner like the one he used for salvage operations. "Unusual choices," commented the armorer. "Most champions favor the power blade or pulse rifle." "I'm not most champions," the armorer laughed. "No, you're the baseline who thinks he can claim a princess. The betting pools have your survival at less than 3 minutes. Guess I better prove them wrong." A fanfare sounded, and the chamber doors opened. Kai stepped into blinding light and deafening noise. Thousands of beings cheering or jeering as he entered the arena. The space had been configured as a combat circle, simple and brutal. Across from him, another door opened. His opponent emerged. The guard champion was everything Kai wasn't. 2.5 meters tall, muscles enhanced with bio-augmentation, movements that spoke of decades of combat training. He carried a power blade that hummed with lethal energy. "I am Warrior Prime Kolvar," the champion announced. "I offer you the honor of surrender. There is no shame in acknowledging superiority." "Thanks," Kai said. "But I'll pass." Kolvar shrugged. "Then die well, little human." He attacked. The speed was incredible. Kai barely got his plasma cutter up in time to deflect the power blade, the impact jarring his entire arm. He rolled aside as Kolvar's follow-up strike cracked the arena floor where he'd been standing. Think. Don't fight his fight. Fix the problem. Kai circled using the scanner to analyze his opponent. There. Microfluctuations in Kolvar's bio-augmentation, tiny delays between thought and enhanced action. The warrior was incredibly fast, but the augmentations had a pattern, a rhythm. Kolvar attacked again, a series of strikes that would have dismembered an ordinary human. But Kai wasn't trying to match him blow for blow. Instead, he moved just enough, always just outside the arc of maximum force, letting Kolvar's own momentum work against him. "Stand and fight," the champion growled, frustration bleeding through his professional calm. "I am fighting," Kai replied, ducking another swing. "Just not the way you want me to." The scanner beeped, pattern recognized. Kulvar's augmentations drew massive power for his enhanced speed, but that created heat. Heat that had to be dispersed through thermal vents along his spine. Vents that were starting to clog with arena dust kicked up by his own violent movements. Kai smiled. Now it was just an engineering problem. He let Kulvar drive him back closer to the arena wall. The champion, sensing victory, increased his assault. More power, more heat, more dust in the air. The thermal vents struggled, efficiency dropping. "Getting tired?" Kai asked, noting the slight tremor in Kulvar's blade arm. "Silence!" The warrior launched himself in a devastating leap attack. Kai waited until the last second, then activated his plasma cutter at full dispersion, not as a weapon, but as a tool. The wide beam-setting flash heated the air between them, creating a thermal updraft that filled with arena dust. Kulvar flew through the cloud, his vents sucking in superheated particles. Warning lights flashed along his augmentations as thermal management failed. He landed hard, movement suddenly sluggish. "Impossible!" he gasped, internal temperature spiking toward critical. "No," Kai said, approaching carefully. "Just thermodynamics." The plasma cutter's focused beam found the primary power coupling at the base of Kulvar's skull. One precise cut, and the warrior's augmentation shut down completely. He collapsed, alive, but helpless as merely human muscles tried to support his enhanced skeleton. The arena fell silent. Then Lyra's voice rang out. "Victor Kai of Gaylord 9. The crowd erupted. Shock, outrage, excitement all mingling in a cacophony of alien voices. In the royal box, Marcus's perfect features twisted with displeasure. While beside him, Theron looked thoughtful. Guards helped Kulvar from the arena as medical field stabilized him. The warrior managed to catch Kai's eye as he was carried past. "Well fought," he said grudgingly. "You honor her choice." The arena began to shift, preparing for the second trial. But as Kai watched crystal walls rise and reality blur, he thought about Lyra's words. "Fix the broken things. 1 down, 2 to go." And somewhere in the stands, a princess who'd gambled everything on a frontier mechanic allowed herself a moment of hope. The hardest trials were yet to come. But for now, love had claimed its first victory against tradition. The arena finished its transformation, becoming a maze of mirrors and shadows. Somewhere within Lakai's deepest fears made manifest. Time for the real test to begin. The maze of mirrors dissolved into something worse. Memory. Kai found himself standing in a familiar corridor, one he hadn't seen in 15 years. The walls were industrial gray, lined with pipes that leaked condensation in a steady rhythm. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and desperation. Sub-level 47. New Shanghai Industrial Complex. Earth. "No," he breathed. But the construct didn't care about his denial. It pulled him deeper. Past doors he remembered too well toward the sound that still haunted his dreams. The grinding of massive gears and a child's terrified screaming. "Kai." The voice was young, desperate. "Kai, help me!" He ran just as he had then, around the corner through the maintenance hatch into the vast machinery room where the city's atmospheric processors ground endlessly on. And there, just as before, was Mira, his sister, 7 years old, her leg caught in the gears of a machine that wouldn't stop. Couldn't stop because stopping would mean suffocation for millions above. "I can fix this," his younger self was saying, frantically working with tools too big for 15-year-old hands. "Just hold on, Mira, I can fix this." But he couldn't. Not then. The safety protocols were hard-coded, the machinery too complex, and by the time he'd figured out a solution, the screaming stopped. "Fascinating," a voice said behind him. Kai spun to find himself facing himself. An older version wearing the kind of clothes he dreamed of as a kid. Successful, clean, unmarked by grease or failure. "This is what broke you. What sent you running to the frontier?" It wasn't my fault, Kai said automatically. Wasn't it? His doppelganger circled him slowly. You were the one who brought her there, showing off, trying to impress your baby sister with your knowledge of machines. You were the one who let her get too close. I was a kid, so was she. But she's dead, and you're not. The other Kai leaned in close. Tell me, how many machines have you fixed since then? Hundreds. Thousands. And did any of it bring her back? The scene shifted. Now he stood in another memory, the workshop of Master Chen, the man who taught him everything about repair and maintenance. But Chen lay on the floor, clutching his chest, reaching out, desperately. Please, Chen gasped. The medkit just need to stabilize. But younger Kai was frozen, staring at the blood. So much blood, just like with Mira. By the time he'd snapped out of it, found the medkit, figured out how to use it. 2 for 2, his doppelganger noted, starting to see a pattern. You can fix machines, Kai, but people you let die. More scenes flashed by. Every failure, every loss, every time his skills hadn't been enough. The frontier was full of such moments, people depending on him falling short, death following in his wake. This is why you hide, the other Kai said conversationally. Surround yourself with machines that can't bleed, can't scream, can't die because you were too slow or too stupid or too scared. But now, the doppelganger smiled coldly. Now you're trying to claim a princess. A living, breathing person who's depending on you to save her. I already saved her. In the desert, you delayed her death. There's a difference. The construct shifted, showing Lyra in various states of injury, pain, death. Look at all the ways you'll fail her. During the trials after, when Marcus comes for revenge, years from now, when age or accident or the 1,000 dangers of the frontier finally catch up, you will fail her. No. Yes, because that's what you do, Kai. You fix machines and fail people. It's your nature. The doppelganger spread his hands. But there's a solution. Give up. Surrender. Let her find someone worthy. Someone who can actually protect her. It's the kindest thing. You're right, Kai interrupted. The doppelganger blinked. What? You're right. I failed Mara. Failed Master Chen. Failed a dozen others along the way. Kai took a deep breath. But you know what? I also succeeded. Saved 30 miners when their life support failed on Kellis 3. Kept a whole colony alive through a plague on Batho Station by jury-rigging medical equipment I barely understood. Fixed countless things that kept people breathing, moving, living. Luck. No choice. He faced his darker self squarely. I chose to keep trying. After every failure, every loss, I chose to pick up my tools and try again, because that's what fixing things means. Not never failing, but continuing, despite failure. The construct wavered, uncertain. And Lyra, Kai continued, she doesn't need me to be perfect. She needs me to be present, to try, to fix what I can and accept what I can't. He smiled grimly. Besides, she's pretty good at taking care of herself. Did you see her fight? I'm not her protector. I'm her partner. Big difference. Pretty words, the doppelganger sneered. But its form was already becoming translucent. But when she dies, and she will die, remember that you could have walked away. Everyone dies, Kai said simply. The question is what we do before then. The maze shattered like broken glass. He stood in the arena again, whole and breathing as the crowd roared its approval or disappointment. He couldn't tell which. In the royal box, Lyra was on her feet, tears streaming down her face, but smiling. 2 trials complete, Theron announced. The final test awaits. They gave him an hour to rest, to prepare. Lyra came to him in the preparation chamber, throwing herself into his arms without regard for watching eyes. That was... She pulled back to look at him. How did you break free so quickly? Most candidates are trapped for hours. Some never escape at all. I've had a lot of practice facing my failures, he said. Turns out less scary when you accept them instead of running. She kissed him fiercely. The last trial. They'll take genetic samples from both of us, run them through the compatibility matrices. If our DNA can't merge successfully, it will work, he said with more confidence than he felt. It has to. There's something else. Something I didn't tell you. She glanced around, then lowered her voice. The compatibility test doesn't just check if we can have children. It reads deeper emotional resonance, psychological compatibility, even soul bonding. If you believe in such things, it will know if what we have is real. Are you worried it's not? No. She met his eyes. But the test, it will change you. The nanosamples will rewrite parts of your DNA to optimize compatibility. You'll still be you, but enhanced, changed, more than human. And if I don't want to be changed, then we fail. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. I'm sorry. I should have told you earlier, but I was afraid that I'd run, that you'd stay out of obligation rather than choice. She touched his face gently. You can still withdraw. The first 2 trials proved your worth. No one would call you coward. Kai caught her hand, pressed it flat against his chest where she could feel his heartbeat. I'm not going anywhere. Change me. Enhance me. Rewrite my whole genome if necessary, as long as I'm still the man who can make you smile when you're elbowed deep in broken processors. I'm good, she laughed wetly. How do you do that? Make everything seem fixable. Practice, he said. Plus, I had a good teacher. This princess I know showed me that broken doesn't mean worthless. The hour passed too quickly. They led him to a medical chamber where machines hummed with purpose he couldn't fathom. Lyra was in an identical chamber across from him, separated by transparent aluminum. They could see each other, but not touch. The process will take approximately 6 hours, a medical technician explained. You'll be conscious but immobilized. The nanoprobes will map your genetic structure, compare it to the princess's, and make necessary adjustments. There may be some discomfort. Some discomfort turned out to be a significant understatement. It started as tingling, like circulation returning to a numb limb, then heat building slowly but inexorably as the nanoprobes did their work. Kai gritted his teeth, focusing on Lyra's face through the barrier. She was experiencing the same process, her features tight with controlled pain. Hours crawled by. The technicians monitored readouts, occasionally murmuring to each other in concerned tones. Through the haze of sensation, Kai heard fragments. Unpreed integration rate. Look at those compatibility markers. Should be impossible with baseline human DNA. The pain shifted, became something else. Not worse, but stranger. Kai felt his body changing at a cellular level. DNA unraveling and reweaving itself. His vision sharpened, showing him spectrums he'd never seen before. His hearing expanded, picking up the ultrasonic hum of the medical equipment. Even his thoughts felt clearer, faster, more connected. But through it all, one sensation remained constant. A pull toward Lyra, like gravity itself was drawing them together. He could feel her presence, not just visually, but deeper, as if their souls were reaching across the space between. Remarkable, someone breathed. Look at the synchronization rates. They're harmonizing on every level. Time lost meaning. Past and present blurred together. Kai saw flashes of Lyra's memories, a childhood in crystal palaces, the weight of expectations, the moment she decided to run. In return, he felt her experiencing his past, the frontier worlds, the workshop, the quiet satisfaction of fixing broken things, and underneath it all, a deeper recognition, not just compatibility, but completion. Two halves of something finding each other across impossible odds. It's done, the lead technician announced, sounding stunned. Perfect integration. 100% compatibility on all matrices. A pause. This is unprecedented. The highest previous recording was 87%. The chambers opened. Kai stumbled out, legs shaky, but holding. The world looked different, sharper, more vivid, alive with colors he'd never had names for. But all of that faded to background as Lyra reached him. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi yourself." He touched her face wonderingly. He could feel her emotions like a second heartbeat. Joy, relief, love so profound it took his breath away. "Is this normal?" "Nothing about us is normal." She leaned into his touch. "How do you feel?" "Like I could fix a quantum drive with my bare hands. Like I could run for days without stopping." Like he paused, searching for words. "Like I'm finally complete. The biointegration will stabilize over the next few days." The technician interrupted. "You'll need to adapt to your enhanced capabilities. Enhanced strength, speed, sensory acuity. Your healing factor is now comparable to the princess's and the emotional bond." "Well, that's permanent." "I can live with that," Kai said, not looking away from Lyra. They were escorted back to the arena for the formal announcement. The crowd was silent now, processing what they'd witnessed. 3 trials, all passed, a compatibility rate that shouldn't be possible. Marcus stood in the royal balm, his handsome features ugly with rage. "This is a trick. Genetic manipulation. I demand." "You demand nothing." Theron cut him off. "The trials were conducted according to ancient law. The results are verified by the biomatrices themselves. The bond is genuine, recognized by the very systems that maintain our civilization. But he's nobody, a frontier mechanic, a mongrel with no bloodline, no standing." "He is my choice," Lyra said, her voice carrying clearly through the arena. "And according to the laws you claim to uphold, that makes him worthy. The Council acknowledges the successful completion of the trials," Theron announced formally. "The right of selection is confirmed. Princess Lyra may choose her path freely." Lyra stepped forward, still holding Kai's hand. "Then I choose to renounce my claim to the Crystal Throne. I release all rights, all privileges, all obligations of royal blood. From this day forward, I am simply Lyra, citizen of the Confederation, bound to no one but the man beside me." The crowd erupted, some cheered, some protested, but the legal formula had been spoken. The biomatrices throughout the chamber pulsed acknowledgement. Accepting her decision. "You can't," Marcus snarled. "The bloodline, the succession is your problem now," Lyra said calmly. "You wanted the throne so badly. It's yours. All of it. The power, the responsibility, the weight of 17 systems on your shoulders. Enjoy." She turned to Kai. "Ready to go home? Lead the way." They walked out of the arena hand in hand, leaving behind a stunned council, a raging would-be emperor, and a confederation that would be gossiping about this for decades. In the transport that would take them back to Galor 9, Kai asked, "Any regrets?" "Only one." Lyra curled against him, finally allowing exhaustion to show. "My ship is still broken. Good thing you know a decent mechanic." "The best," she corrected. "Though I should warn you, he's genetically bonded to this really demanding customer now. She expects quality work. She'll get it." Kai promised. "After all, I've got a reputation to maintain. Can't have word getting out that I do shoddy work for my wife." Lyra went very still. "Wife? Well, yeah. We're genetically bonded, emotionally synchronized, and legally recognized. Figured that was close enough to marriage." He paused. "Unless your people have some other ceremony." She kissed him to shut him up. When they finally broke apart, she was crying and laughing simultaneously. "No ceremony. This is enough. You're enough. Good, because I don't think I packed formal wear." The transport jumped to hyperspace, leaving Ashanti Prime and all its complications behind. Ahead lay Gaylord 9, the desert, and a workshop that needed rebuilding. It wasn't much of a kingdom, but it was theirs. "So," Lyra said sleepily, "think we can salvage anything from your workshop?" "We'll salvage what we can and build the rest from scratch." He kissed her forehead. "That's what we do, right? Fix broken things." "Together," she agreed. The stars stree, carrying them toward their new life. Behind them, a confederation struggled to adapt to a future without its princess. Ahead, two people who'd found each other across impossible odds, prepared to build something new from the ashes of their old lives. It wasn't the ending anyone had expected, but then again, the best fixes rarely followed the manual. In the quiet of hyperspace, genetically bound and emotionally synchronized, a former princess and an upgraded mechanic began planning their future. It would involve a lot of work, probably some danger, and definitely more broken things to fix. They could hardly wait. The return to Galore 9 revealed the true extent of the damage where Kai's workshop had stood. Only twisted metal-infused sand remained. The Royal Guard had been thorough in their destruction, leaving nothing salvageable larger than his fist. "I'm so sorry," Lyra whispered, surveying the devastation. "This is my fault. If I hadn't—" "Stop!" Kai knelt, sifting through the debris until he found what he was looking for. A small metal plate, scorched but intact. His workshop's nameplate. "We'll rebuild better this time." But rebuilding required resources they didn't have. Their accounts had been frozen during the trial period, and while Lyra's renunciation was legal, Marcus wasn't above using bureaucratic warfare to make their lives difficult. "We need work," Kai concluded after reviewing their supplies. "Real work, the kind that pays enough to buy equipment." "I know someone," Lyra said hesitantly. "Vera from Zara's Reach. You mentioned her before. Said you didn't part on good terms." Kai's expression darkened. "That's one way to put it. What happened?" "She offered me a partnership 5 years ago. More than a partnership, actually. I turned her down and she didn't take it well." He shrugged. "But if she has work, they made the journey to Zara's Reach in their salvaged rover. Now their only meaningful possession." The trading post seemed busier than before, with more ships in dock and a heavier security presence. Vera's operation occupied an entire sector of the lower levels, a massive salvage and repair facility that processed everything from small fighters to capital ship components. The woman herself hadn't changed much. Tall, scarred, with cybernetic eyes that missed nothing. "Well, well," she looked up from a dismantled hyperdrive. "Kai the Hermit, come crawling back, and with company." Her gaze swept over Lyra with professional assessment. "Pretty enhanced, too. You always did have good taste." Vera Kai kept his tone neutral. "We need work. I heard about your workshop. Also heard about some excitement on Ashanti Prime. A princess renouncing her throne for love." She smiled sharply. "Romantic? Stupid, but romantic. Can you help us or not?" Vera was quiet for a moment. "Then I've got a contract. Big one. Colony ship dead in space. Life support failing. Needs a complete overhaul. It's a 6-week job minimum. Dangerous. And the colony can only pay in trade goods. Most crews won't touch it, but if someone could get their primary systems online in, say, 2 weeks before life support fails completely, there's a bonus, a big one. Enough to set up a new workshop with quality equipment." Kai glanced at Lyra, who nodded slightly. "We'll take it." "Good. But I'm coming with you. This is my contract, my reputation." She grinned. "Besides, I want to see if the Hermit's still got his magic touch." The colony ship Haven's Hope hung dead in space, a massive cylinder that should have been rotating to provide artificial gravity, but instead drifted lifeless among the stars. 3,000 souls aboard, mostly families seeking a new life on a frontier world. "Primary reactors completely slag," Vera reported after their initial survey. "Secondaries running at 12% capacity. Life supports patched together with prayer and duct tape." "How they've lasted this long. Desperation is a hell of a motivator," Kai said, already cataloging the damage. "Lyra, can you handle the nav systems? I know it's not your usual." "I've got it." She was already interfacing with the ship's computer, her enhanced capabilities letting her process data streams that would overwhelm an unaugmented human. Navigation's actually the least of their problems. Someone's been stealing power from non-essential systems to keep life support running. Smart work. They met the colony's leadership in what should have been the captain's quarters, but now served as a makeshift command center. Governor Martinez was a small woman with exhausted eyes and premature gray in her hair. "You're the repair crew?" She looked between them doubtfully. "Just the three of you?" "We're specialists," Vera said smoothly. "My team can do more than a dozen regular mechanics." "I hope so. We've got maybe 20 days before." Martinez gestured helplessly. "Before we start losing people, the children and elderly first, we've already had to reduce oxygen mixtures to dangerous levels." "We'll need full access," Kai said. "Every system, every bypass, every jury rig your people have done. No hiding problems because you're embarrassed. Done." "Whatever you need." What followed were the most intense 2 weeks of Kai's life. The colony ship was a puzzle of failing systems, each repair revealing 2 more problems. But now he had advantages he'd never possessed before. Enhanced reflexes that let him work in dangerous conditions, improved cognition that helped him see solutions faster, and a partner who anticipated his needs before he voiced them. The emotional bond with Lyra had deepened into something almost telepathic when they worked together. He'd think about needing a specific tool, and she'd already be handing it to him. She'd hit a problem with the navigation matrix, and he'd know instantly, able to offer solutions without her explaining the issue. "It's creepy," Vera observed on day 4, watching them work in perfect synchronization. "Beautiful, but creepy, like watching a 2-headed organism." "Jealous?" Lyra asked without looking up from her repairs. "Maybe a little?" Vera's tone was lighter than Kai had ever heard it. "I offered him partnership once. He turned me down flat. Now I see why. He was waiting for someone who could match him properly. The work was exhausting, dangerous." They crawled through radiation-soaked maintenance shafts, rewired systems while they were still hot, rebuilt components from whatever materials they could scavenge more than once. Kai's enhanced healing factor saved him from injuries that would have killed him months ago. But the real challenge wasn't mechanical. It was human. There's panic in Section C. Governor Martinez reported on day 7. "Some people want to abandon ship in the shuttles, take their chances finding another vessel. The shuttles won't last 3 days, Kai said without stopping his work on a power coupling. "Their life support is even worse than the main ships. I know that, but frightened people don't think clearly." She paused. "Could you talk to them? You've been in the deep black, survived on frontier worlds. They might listen to you." Kai looked at Lyra, who nodded encouragingly. An hour later, he found himself in front of 200 terrified colonists, trying to find words that would keep them from making a fatal mistake. "I know you're scared," he began awkwardly. "I've been scared plenty of times. First time my life support failed. I was alone on a mining rig in the Kellen Belt. Thought I was dead for sure." "What did you do?" someone called out. "Fixed it," he said simply. "Took apart my water recycler. Used the components to patch the air system. Tasted terrible, and I was thirsty for days. But I lived." He looked around the room. "That's what we do out here. We fix what's broken, make do with what we have, and we survive. Your ship will hold. We'll make sure of it." "How can you be sure?" A woman holding a young child stood up. "My daughter, how can I trust her life to strangers?" Lyra stepped forward. "Because we've staked our own lives on it. We're not leaving until this ship is ready to fly. Your danger is our danger. Your children's future is tied to our success." She smiled softly. "And my partner doesn't fail when children are counting on him?" It wasn't a long speech or particularly eloquent, But something in their manner, the quiet confidence, the obvious bond between them seemed to reassure the colonists. The panic subsided, replaced by determined hope. By day 10, they'd performed miracles. The primary reactor was rebuilt using components from 3 shuttles and parts Vera acquired from her emergency supplies. Life support was stabilized, then improved. The rotation systems came back online, providing blessed gravity after weeks of drift. But their success drew attention. "Company," Vera announced, checking her scanner. 3 ships coming in fast. Configuration suggests trouble." Through the viewport, Kai saw sleek vessels that screamed military precision. Not Royal Guard, but something else. Private military contractors, maybe. "Or Marcus," Lyra breathed. "He sent retrieval teams." "Can the colony ship run?" Vera asked. "Not fast enough to outrun those." Kai's mind raced. "But maybe we don't need to run." He turned to the colony ship's comm system. "Governor Martinez, I need you to broadcast on all channels that the ship is under quarantine. Virulent plague, highly contagious. Anyone approaching will be fired upon to prevent spread. But there's no plague. They don't know that. And private military won't risk contamination for a retrieval job." He glanced at Lyra. "Meanwhile, we prepare for the possibility they're too stupid to stay away." The lead ship hailed them within minutes. "Colony vessel, this is Commander Reeves of Redemption Security. We are here for the fugitives, Kai and Lyra. Surrender them and we'll leave peacefully. This is Governor Martinez. Our ship is under medical quarantine. Approaching within 1 kilometer risks exposure to a level 5 pathogen. For your own safety, maintain distance." There was silence then. "Nice try, but our scans show no biological hazards. Prepare to be boarded." "Well," Vera said conversationally, loading her weapon. It was worth a shot, but Lyra was smiling. "Kai, remember the atmospheric processor? The resonance frequency." "Yeah." "What if we could do something similar with their ships? Their shields operate on harmonic frequencies. If we could calculate the inverse wave, it would create interference, maybe even feedback." He was already moving to the engineering console, but we'd need massive power and precision timing, and I can handle the timing. Lyra said, "Vera, can you keep them talking? Buy us 5 minutes. I can buy you 10 if you need it," Vera said, activating the comm. "Commander Reeves, this is Captain Vera Tosk. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Why don't we discuss terms?" What followed was the most complex piece of engineering improvisation Kai had ever attempted. Using the colony ship's main communications array, they created a directed harmonic pulse designed to interfere with the approaching ship's shields. Not enough to destroy them, but enough to cause system failures. "Frequency calculated," Lyra reported on. "But Kai, this could damage our own systems too. Not if we're inside the interference bubble. The colony ship's hull will protect us. But those military raw shields..." He made final adjustments. "Ready? Do it." The pulse was invisible to the eye, but its effects were immediate. The approaching ships suddenly lurched as their shield systems failed catastrophically. Secondary explosions followed as overloaded systems cascaded throughout their ships. "All ships, this is Commander Reeves. We're experiencing massive system failures. Request immediate." The transmission cut off as their comm systems died. "They're not destroyed," Kai reported, watching the ships drift. "But they're dead in space. It'll take them days to repair those systems, maybe weeks. Long enough for us to finish here and disappear," Vera concluded. "Not bad, Hermit. Not bad at all." 4 days later, the colony ship's engines roared to life. The sound reverberated through the hull like a hymn, bringing tears to many eyes. Governor Martinez hugged each of them in turn, too emotional for words. "The bonus," she finally managed, producing a credit chip. "With our thanks." "It's not enough for what you've done, but it's plenty," Kai assured her. "Get your people to their new world safely. That's thanks enough." As they watched Haven's Hope jump to hyperspace, Vera turned to them. "So what now? Back to Gullor 9 to rebuild." "Actually," Lyra said. I was thinking we might travel for a while. There are a lot of broken things out here that need fixing. A mobile repair operation, Vera considered. Could work. You'd need a ship, though. Something fast enough to reach problems quickly. Tough enough to handle dangerous situations. Know where we could find something like that? Vera grinned. As a matter of fact, I do won that military commander ship in the salvage auction yesterday. Seems he couldn't pay the recovery fees after someone fried all his systems. It's yours if you want it. Vera, Kai said slowly. That's too generous. What's the catch? No catch. Well, one small condition. Her expression softened. I get first call on any big salvage you find out there. And maybe you stop by Zara's Reach sometimes. Gets lonely being the only competent engineer in this sector. They took the ship, a sleek courier vessel with military-grade armor and engines that purred like satisfied predators. Lyra named it Second Chances. Their first night aboard, drifting between stars, they sat in the cockpit, watching the universe scroll by. Any regrets? Kai asked, echoing his question from Ashanti Prime. None. Lyra laced her fingers through his. For the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I want to be. Doing work that matters with someone who sees me as a partner rather than a prize. The great princess reduced to a wandering mechanic. Elevated to a wandering mechanic, she corrected. There's nothing reduced about choosing your own path. An alert chimed. Their automated systems had detected a distress signal, a mining platform with failing life support too far from major routes for most rescue ships to bother with. Shall we? Lyra asked, already plotting a course. Let's go fix something. Kai agreed. Second Chances leapt into hyperspace, carrying two souls who'd found each other across impossible odds. Behind them, the Ashanti Confederation struggled with political upheaval and a bitter would-be emperor. Ahead, the frontier waited with all its dangers and possibilities. They'd lost an empire, but gained a universe. It seemed like a fair trade. He fixed her ship in silence, Lyra murmured, watching stars blur past. And somewhere in that silence, I chose him to be my lifemate. Still choosing me? Kai asked. Every day, she confirmed. Every single day. The ship flew on, carrying love and hope and the promise of repairs to places that needed the most. It wasn't the life either of them had planned, but it was the one they'd built together. One fixed system, one saved life, one moment at a time. And in the vast darkness between stars, that was more than enough. It was everything.